Alright guys, today we're going to be doing a car check on my Turbo Miata drift car, drift missile if you will. It's a little beat up. This car is about to go under the knife and get a lot of revisions. We're doing an LS and all sorts of stuff, so I really wanted to do this now to show you guys how budget you can build one of these and how well they can perform. I would venture to say this is like probably the best budget drift car you can get for a lot of different reasons. We'll get into that a little later, but for right now let's talk about the car itself. So this is a 1997 Mazda Miata. As far as the chassis goes, I've done some very minor things. We've got some wheels on it, BC Racing coilovers with a little bit longer stroke in the rear and softer spring rates front and rear. You got a Treasure Coast hardtop, some mirrors that people always ask me where I got them. I don't know, they came on the car. Back here it's got a Torsen LSD. I find it works pretty well. I mean, for drifting, a lot of people take these out and put in welded diffs. Either or, if you have it. If you have an open diff, I would just weld it, but if you have a Torsen in the car, they work absolutely fine. Moving on to the interior, I've got this wheel. I cycled this one and my Vertex one out between my Corvette. I haven't been driving this car much lately, so I put the Vertex back in the vet. This is just a 350 mil NRG like Galaxy wheel. I wouldn't suggest this big of a wheel in here. 330 is about the limit. This one feels pretty constrained, like right up against the door. Me, Jimmy Oaks, and Marco made this sweet instrument panel out of ABS. It's got my two Auber gauges. I really like these gauges. I'll put the link to them below because I get a lot of questions about them. It's also got a sweet odometer clock, which is hilarious. Up in the top two holes here, I have a boost gauge and I have my wideband. These are nice and visible so I can see both of those things because they are both rather important. I've also got this sweet peg shifter. I've been doing this for probably, I don't know, 5-6 years now. You take a BMX peg, 3/8 ideally. It normally slides over most shafts, and then you have a washer on the bottom, washer on top, nut. You got a peg shifter, BMX peg shifter. E-brake is stock. I just have to adjust it all the time. I tape the button down. Sometimes if e-braking is going to be crucial for tandeming and stuff, I generally like to tape the button down just so I don't accidentally like, oh, I almost rolled back. Just so I don't accidentally pull it up and like forget to drop it back down. Another really interesting thing with this car, I've got this gain knob here, which a lot of people ask, like, do I have a radio? So I do kind of have a radio. There's an amp back behind here. This plugs in with RCA, so this is a gain knob. So this is essentially adjusting the volume or the gain of the input from this aux cord. So I don't have to deal with like an actual radio. I guess I could put one here, but I will eventually put stuff here. It's convenient. It's literally hidden behind the dash, works just like a radio would, other than the radio aspect. And then 2-door speakers, so pretty standard. Got this Bride seat. I think it might be a real one. It's probably a fake one, but it definitely feels like a real one compared to a lot of the fake ones I've felt. I have no idea. It does have authentic Bride rails. I don't remember where it says it. Electric power windows, very convenient. There's no crank on the door. The door panels are flat. Before we get out of the interior, let me show you something that I'm very proud of. So this is my Bluetooth controller for my little lights, which I'll show you when it gets dark because it's going to happen here soon. This is what held that dash piece on. We're going to have to fix that. So we've got constant power coming from the battery. This is the constant power little terminal board. This is key on power. So everything that I need to give power to whenever I turn the key on, like the gauges, clock, all that stuff runs off here. And then things like this Bluetooth controller and whatnot run off of this, always on. Got a nice relay back here to trigger this one. I'm just proud of this. It was one of those wiring jobs that I took my time on. I think it looks good, even though you never see it because it's hidden behind this guy. Okay, that wraps up the interior, I would say. All right, so as we move on to the engine bay, this is a 1.8 Miata. These came in 94 and up NA model Miatas, which is what this is. Real quick, I have the little sleepy eye conversion. You just unplug the motors, twist them down. I took the housing out of mine and mounted these little light bars. They work fantastic. So what I have on here for the turbo setup is an old Veggie kit. It used to have a Garrett 2554, which is a ball bearing T25. It's got this nice welded up intercooler piping that's meant to clear AC stuff. I now have an ISR 3871. This is basically a knockoff of a Garrett 2871R, which is ball bearing. This is journal bearing. but it still spools surprisingly quick. This is actually my third engine, but I pretty much figured out what caused it. Hold on, let me show you. I think I figured it out at least. All of these injector pigtails were just butt connected on. This one, when we went to go diagnose the harness, it just like fell apart. So I think I was getting intermittent signal to that injector the entire time, which would certainly cause, you know, that cylinder going super lean if it was getting intermittent signal and melting the piston, which is the issue I've had. This particular motor I rebuilt with the help of Alberto and Marco. This one has new bearings, new rings, new seals, new everything, new pistons. We gapped the rings for the turbo specific application. I've got ARP head studs, stock head gasket. Didn't want to run like a Cometic because if you don't have the block decked, you can run into sealing issues. Use Permatex copper spray on it. Like I have all my head gaskets, never had a head gasket failure issue. And otherwise the engine is bone stock. It's essentially a stock rebuild bottom end. And it makes roughly 220 wheel. As you can see, the sun is going down, so let's take this thing for a drive before it gets dark and then we'll finish this up. We can't go super far because the car is not currently registered. So we'll stay within the neighborhood, but can't be a car check without taking the car for a drive. So a few things that I really enjoy about this car is, one, since I did the longer stroke stuff with the suspension, it just soaks up the bumps like they're nothing. Like you can just kind of like monster truck through some really bumpy areas and it's not an issue. Spools really quick, so we're at, hold on, we'll slow down. We're at 3,000 RPM right now. That's full boost. So it hits full boost by about 3,200, 3,300, something like that, and then just pulls the rest of the way till 7. And what's so neat about that is I had an SR car with a real ball bearing 2871R on it, and it was much laggier in this car, and that's with a 2 liter instead of a 1.8 liter. That guy did not wave back, what a jerk. I've been striking out on waving at people lately because nobody seems to want to wave back. I don't get it. It's not a very laggy setup, so it's super usable power. Like even at the compound where we tighten up into that horseshoe, I stay in second gear and I have to do maybe 1, maybe 2 clutch kicks and I'm back up in the power band. And that's crucial. I mean, it doesn't matter how much power you make if you're never in the room to be in that power band. Like it's just completely useless. Definitely wouldn't want to go any larger than this turbo on this particular application. If it was like a drag Miata or something, then I'm sure it would be fine. But for drifting in a Miata, wouldn't want to go any bigger. It should roll the tires pretty good, even with 205s in the back if we get on it hard at first. Let's see. There's nobody outside. Don't do this at home. This is a close course and race car driver. It definitely gets up and goes, like no problem. Like third gear, I'm getting full boost, a little above 3 grand. We can't do really much of any performance driving within the neighborhood. I always try to respect residential areas. You never know when someone's going to be walking, not paying attention, especially certain areas of this one, because there's always people outside. I can't believe how well this thing still runs, especially having less than 80 psi of compression on one cylinder. If you haven't seen the video of me trying to blow this up, you should probably check it out. It's a pretty entertaining video, but obviously it didn't blow up, kept slinging alternator belts. I fixed that earlier. If you were wondering what I was doing in the beginning of this video, that's what it was. 2 things I forgot to mention, the car also has angle mods, and I have a Megasquirt. It's a Megasquirt 1, but with a MS357 board, so it's basically a Megasquirt 2 software-wise and a Megasquirt 1 case. That makes any sense, but basically just think of it as the MS2 plug and play. All right, so that's my car. There's not much to it. It's a pretty simple build. I don't have much money at all tied up in this thing. I think you could build this car the right way if you found a decent deal on the starting platform and all of that, for about $5,000. So that brings me into why I think this is the most affordable drift car you can buy. It's not just the initial cost. So when it comes to drifting, the build price of the car is not all that matters. Like, you could spend $2,000 on an old Jaguar and load the diff and it could be a great drift car. I mean, we don't know because we haven't tried it, but there's more to being a cost-effective drift car than just the initial cost of the build. There's a few things that make this car exceptionally cost-effective to drift. The number one biggest thing is tires. So not only are these tires super cheap, I can buy nice hand-cooked vintage V2s, 400 tread wear so they last a long time, and 205 50 size for like $50 a tire shipped. The car is so light that it doesn't really go through tires. I had one set of tires on that I drove a full day at the compound with. Which is not forgiving on tires. 2 full days at Auburndale Speedway. Also not forgiving on tires, and I pulled them off before they were even completely dead. With a decent rear suspension setup, these things are rockets even with a 400 tread wear 205. So you can make one of these fast enough to keep up with most grassroots cars, but while only going through one set of tires an event, and a set of tires that costs $100 shipped at that. So that is a big reason why the Miata, in my opinion, is a great starter affordable drift car. That's why I'm sticking with this platform. It's going to be a bit more wild. It will go through a bit more tires, but it's still going to be one of the most cost-effective cars I can drive because of that lightweight, small tire size. The next big thing is replacement parts. Not only are they very easy to find because there's tons of people that part on Miatas, there's 3 main people here just in like the Central Florida area. One of them is a good friend of mine. So to find pretty much any part I need is like a text away. But they're also cheap. They're like dirt cheap. Like, I've been buying blocks for this thing because I'm on my 3rd one for like $100 a pop. I don't know of many other cars that parts are this affordable. I bought a subframe for $40 delivered to my house. They're also super easy to work on. I can pull the motor out of this car in about half an hour once the car's already up on jacks. It is one of the easiest cars I've ever worked on. 240 is a little bit easier, but it's pretty easy. See, I'm not really trying to sell anyone on Miatas. I'm just telling you that they are a very cost-effective option, and that is why I'm sticking with the car. Now, a couple of major gripes people have, something that will probably have already been commented on this video, is that, well, Miatas are really hard to drift. They're really not that hard to drift. I think that misconception comes from people who either tried to learn in one and didn't spend enough time in one, or are used to driving something like an S chassis that basically drives itself. If you go from a car that, like an S chassis that basically drives itself, and you get in one of these, it's gonna feel tough. It's gonna feel like it's a hard car to drift. But once you get the hang of this, one, being that it's a little more difficult, it'll make you a better driver and it'll make driving other things easier. But 2, the main complaint is that it's snappy and twitchy and wants to like spin out on transition and stuff. But once you get the hang of it, you can use that to your advantage, because if you're coming up on somebody, you generally kind of want to transition before them in tandem to dive back in on them. So if you're coming up on them and they transition, you don't have to do this slow transition to get back in the power. You can just transition and be back on them. I think it's great. Time will tell, especially with the new motor. But I had a blast driving it with this setup, and I think this is a very attainable setup for anyone who wants to get into drifting. You're gonna have a hard time with a non-turbo Miata, so if you're gonna get into a Miata, I would suggest making sure you have the budget to do a turbo one, making sure you do it right, otherwise you'll end up like me and blowing up several motors, which I'm sure you don't want to do that either. But all in all, I think this is probably the most affordable drift car. I love it. This is my Miata. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Will we drift it one more time to blow it up, or will we pull the motor out well before then? I don't know. You guys will find out. Thank you guys for watching. Thanks for subscribing. I'll see you next time.